Hi, Andy. Sorry, I got quite delayed by
Okay.
my first customer, but we've had quite a bit of time to talk. So
Yeah.
hopefully most of what you need has been provided.
Yeah. I really only had one question, which was I guess since you studied so many different traditions, I was wondering if you had sort of a place where I can start where it's like a universal sort of like perennial philosophy that I could start with. Because I was thinking about dipping into like the theosophical societies stuff, but I'm not sure.
Theosophy?
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it,
Okay. So
to
what
be honest. What are you looking for?
I guess sort of like a universal sort of like a universal approach to the ancient a history of the ancient traditions, like somehow where everything got mapped into like
Yeah, that's probably not a super productive use of time, to be blunt.
okay.
Because if you're casting that broad a net,
Mm-hmm.
you're into the area of speculative imagination.
Mm,
And everyone's got an opinion on that kind of shit.
okay.
So it's just it's a tar pit, it's a rabbit hole
Mm,
of a life of thinking and arguing and never doing practice. On the other hand, if you're interested in something like that, but more focused, which maybe doesn't have an agreed upon name, but if we were to try to give it a name, it would be an academic field, not a speculative amateur philosopher's field, right? But an academic field that at one time would probably have been called comparative mysticism.
okay.
And that would be a subfield within religious studies.
Mm,
So if we're studying religion anthropologically, sociologically, objectively, that's religious studies, and that's certainly different from a theology school or a seminary where you're training clergy. You're just learning about religion. So one aspect of religion is, quote, mystical experience.
mm,
And the reason for the scare quotes is mystical means two very different things
mm,
in colloquial English or English. First of all, there's the colloquial meaning where it refers to what I would call the phenomena of the realms of power, which I have a whole chapter about in my book.
yeah.
Chapter 11, it's like the realms of power. Okay. A lot of people would call that mystical
Mm,
or new agey, that phrase.
yeah.
So conversing with gods, ghosts, ancestors, the impression that you have certain powers, the impression that you can visit certain worlds or that physical miracles occur. Some people would call that mystical.
Mm-hmm.
And that's getting preoccupied with that is one of the classical traps. You have to
Okay.
see beyond that. But there's the other meaning of mystical. The other meaning of mystical is technical. It comes from Christianity, where they talk about mystical theology, and that's very related to ascetical theology. So in Christianity, as with many other traditions, you had the notion of denying yourself pleasure or exposing yourself to discomfort in the service of purifying your soul and getting closer to God experientially through concentration, clarity, and equanimity. So that aspect of religious experience is called mysticism by scholars, except mystical experience is found outside of religion. So it's a broader topic.
Okay.
Comparative mysticism, contemplative studies might be another term that would sort of be in that ballpark. So you can read books that are surveys on mysticism, but the quality of that book will depend on how sophisticated the author is regarding the difference between mystical experience with a small m, which is the realms of power, and mystical experience with a big M, which is oneness, emptiness, no self, true self. And yes, sometimes that's called the perennial philosophy, meaning it's like a plant that constantly reappears century after century, all over the world in one form or another. Now, in a sense, the system that I and my students have cobbled together is a course in comparative mysticism. So you actually have a really super science-centered version of what you're asking for is the manual.
Yeah.
And there's an origins page, couple pages that show where I got this shit. And that's the history of world mysticism right there.
Okay.
So are we good?
Yeah, pretty much. I guess I was just like, because my mission is to like sort of like merge the mystical experience with science, because even yesterday when I had I feel it now, the buzzing of my head and everything, I noticed when I was in my manic state or my spiritual virtue state, there was a point where I was at the airport and I noticed everything appeared differently, the clarity. And I remember something like an electric thing just buzzed through my whole body. And then when I went to the bathroom stall, like the metal between the stall, like I felt like the magnetism. And I heard like the metal pop, like the metal like bended almost. And I'm like, this is weird. And then after I went to the check-in, it just zooped, like just flew out my body, like so like the Holy Spirit or something like that. And
this is what we call flow. And you were in, I guess, was it full-on mania or like I'm guessing more hypomania?
It was more hypomania, but I was like in an automatic, like innocent state. Like everyone that I just followed Hebrews order, and I was like very like, I just felt like I was like a service to people. Like, oh, you want to do this, sir? Okay, sure thing.
Yeah. See, what can happen is you get a weird mixture of hypomania and actual spiritual, like legitimate spiritual transcendence. And it's like you got to sort it out, right? If you're having magical thinking, that's the hypomania. But if service is a joy because there's no separation of inside and outside, well, that's moving in the direction of liberation and enlightenment. So I've sometimes had this with students, this sort of mixture kind of situation. So it's not unprecedented, but it looks like you've managed it quite well, appropriately, and probably wasn't too severe. I've seen severe cases where
it got severe because I met sort of like a shamanistic group, and they implanted all these magical thinking, saying like,
oh, not good. Yeah.
and then
So you had to be deprogrammed from a cult.
I had to be hospitalized, and then I went through the medication process, and I just felt this numbness, and then eventually I got off the medication, and now I'm here. So
yeah, I have a friend named Daniel Ingram. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yeah, he was one that told me to go to this retreat.
Oh yeah, maybe you mentioned that. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, because he's got this humongous project that I'm not involved in, but Jay Sanguinetti, my lab mate here at the university, is involved with Daniel's, and actually someone else, Philip Murphy, who's also works for the Shinzen Young Foundation. He's also helping Daniel. So I know about this. It's a project so that medical staff can handle exactly your kind of case. Yeah. Now I get it. It's all makes sense.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Well, good. I should probably take my next customer, but fortunately, it worked out for you.
Thanks, Shinzen.
Okay. Bye-bye.